taking three.
Going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your two?
Yeah. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course. And today we are going to take a look at a battle in the Ibuki, yes. And we are on Land of Fire as well. So this should prove interesting, because this map, I mean, we've looked at it a number of times on the channel as well, and I'm sure we've all played it a number of times. But this map is always a little interesting, and it's just, I find it interesting just because, you know, it's the big question here at the beginning of the battle is the enemy going to, you know, all go over there to the west? Are they all going to go over there to the west? If they don't go over to the west, what are they going to do, right? This is always the big question here at the beginning on this map. So in the Ibuki today, and you know, no surprise here, but I do really enjoy this Ibuki. I think she's a great ship at tier 9. Not my favorite tier 9 cruiser. My favorite tier 9 cruiser is obviously the Rune, not including though the Russian tier 9 cruiser, because I haven't played the Russian tier 9 cruiser yet, so I don't know how much I'm going to actually like her. Obviously, I've been doing some reading on the Russian cruisers, looking into them, talking to people as well, and I'm excited to get this, to get up that far in the Russian cruiser line, because I think that I'm going to enjoy them. And the reason why I think I'm going to enjoy them is because they're a different sort of style of cruiser that you have to play when you're in those ships, right? Because we know they have, you know, pretty good guns on those Russian cruisers, but the rate of fire isn't necessarily as good. In addition to that, you have some pretty high citadels, which makes it fairly easy to take you out. Now, the citadels on the Russian cruisers I don't think are going to be that big of an issue for me personally, and this is because I'm fairly used to driving, or sailing rather, Japanese cruisers who, you know, their citadels aren't high above the waterline or nothing like that, but they have really long flat sides to them, and I'm sure we can all can attest to the fact that, you know, the Japanese cruisers are fairly easy to sink and take out, right? If the captain behind the helm isn't doing evasive maneuvers and isn't really paying attention to what's going on. So we do have an enemy destroyer popping up. Put a few shots into him, got a few hits. That's not too bad at all. You can see I'm taking some incoming fire from some enemy ships in the background. Specifically, I believe there's a Mikhail back there. The Mikhail obviously, you know, has a buff to its range now, so I think it's like 18-kilometer range or something to that effect. So the Mikhail is a pretty big threat, right? I'm not just going to sail in a straight line and assume that his shots are going to miss. No, we're going to just get out of that whole situation and start taking a look here at how the battle is unfolding, because we're getting into, you know, beyond the beginning stages here, looking at sort of where the enemy team is setting up and where our team is setting up as well. So we can see that the enemy ships that we see do look like they're sticking around the middle, maybe even the east, which is good, because if we look at the positioning of my team, we're not necessarily in you know, all conglomerated over there on the west waiting for that strike to happen. We're still sort of in the center. We do have some ships who went over onto the east side to sort of contest that area or see what's going on over there as well. So this is fairly good right now. I'm liking the way that the battle is developing so far. We do seem to be in a good position to be able to defend against either the east or the west, depending on where the enemies decide to go. Now, we do see some cruisers in the background who are making their way towards the west, so that's interesting. You know, keep those guys in mind. And actually, before we get too far into this as well, I did want to mention, you know, obviously it's April Fool's, so hooray. I love this day. And it's not because it's April Fool's and you get to play pranks on people and all that, although I do enjoy it. It's hilarious. I've got a little something cooking up here for my roommate Rommel when he gets home, so that's going to be interesting. But anyway, I like it because of the games, right? The games that we're playing, World of Warships, World of Tanks. I don't play a whole lot of War Thunder anymore, but I used to play a whole crap ton, and I do enjoy War Thunder, don't get me wrong. I love taking out my German planes and flying them around. But April Fool's is always a great day because they always have special events, right? And in ships we've got these jacuzzi battles, and I haven't actually played them yet. I wanted to get the video up first before I lose myself in those battles. So Can't wait to try that out, but it looks pretty awesome. I didn't check to see what Tanks is doing today, but I imagine it's something that's fairly similar, along the same lines as being fun and outlandish. And in War Thunder, actually, War Thunder has a pirate ship mode right now. Yes, you can play some War Thunder pirate ships right now, and that looks pretty interesting as well. Got my first kill there, and it was actually, I believe, a destroyer that was in front of that enemy battleship that my torpedo hit. So hooray! That was pretty awesome, pretty lucky as well. But just to get back to the whole April Fool's thing, yeah, that's sort of why I really enjoy this day, is just to see what the games are going to be doing for this day. It's always hilarious, and it's always something that makes you question, whether or not this is happening. I remember I found out about the War Thunder ships from my roommate Rommel. He was going on about how War Thunder now has ships, and how it looks cool. Looks like they're in the Age of Sail, that sort of thing. And I was saying, I don't know, man. I I don't know if that's what War Thunder is actually going to do for their ships. I don't think so. Everything that I've heard, everything that I know about the development of War Thunder ships, which unfortunately I can't share, tells me that that's not what they're doing. That's not the direction that they are going. But he was convinced. So I actually had to go, and I watched one of Baron Von Games. I'm sure we all know who Baron is, a great YouTuber. Watched one of his videos, and it quickly became apparent that that was the April Fool's event that they have going on. But anyway, I thought that was hilarious, and it's always fun to see who falls for the jokes, right? Who falls for the new battle mode in the game, and who thinks that this is going to be a permanent battle mode. They totally forget what day it is. It's always hilarious. Anyway, the battle continues to develop, and it's developing fairly well for us as well. I mean, I am coming under enemy air attack once again, but not really a big concern for me. You can see I managed to dodge those dive bombers. The second set of dive bombers do come in, they do hit me, and they do set me on fire, and I repair it. Yes, I don't have the premium repair on my Ibuki at this time. Well, I do at this time, but in this replay, no. This replay was actually from March 18th, I believe. It might have been like a day or two before. I just went and changed it on all my ships. But anyway, that is why. So we're still sticking in the middle, right? We're still sort of sticking around here in the middle. You can see I have a number of enemy ships on the east side. Now those enemy ships on the east side are going to be playing a critical role here in the battle, because it's going to be those ships who are actually going to be pushing into the enemy base, right? It's those guys who are going to have the big advance, the spearhead of our assault. My role, and the role of the other allied ships I have around me at this point in time, is to defend the base, because you can see that the enemy ships have eventually gone up that west side, right? They're not on the extreme west, obviously. We can see them on the minimap, but they have gone up that west side. So, interesting to see. I am firing armor piercing at some of these targets because I wanted to test out with the Ibuki's guns, as you know, if on battleships I can get some good damage going with these guns, just like you could on a rune, right, with armor piercing against battleships. And you can do some pretty significant damage here with armor piercing in the Ibuki guns. I mean, it's not really that, not necessarily that big of a surprise. We've got the 203s on, right, so they're able to penetrate armor. What we do have to take into consideration here is that, you know, it's not going to do as much damage as the rune, and the biggest thing on that is the different shell velocities compared to the Ibuki and the rune, right? The rune has a higher shell velocity, so it has higher penetration values, where the Ibuki may not have as high of a penetration value on the armor piercing. But you can see, I mean, I got a nice, landed a few shots broadside onto the enemy Iowa back there, and did about 4,200 damage, I believe. So that's not too bad. I was happy with the results on, you know, the armor piercing, shooting at harder targets with the Ibuki. I was happy with it. I'd probably still switch back to my high explosive, considering it's a Japanese ship, right? but I just wanted to see, for my own knowledge, what the armor piercing would do. While all of this is going on, again, my ships on the east are continuing to push towards the enemy base. Over here in the enemy base where I am, and I've got some other allies around me, you can see that the pressure is starting to build over here, right? The enemy ships are getting closer. They're not actually in our base, though, but they are getting closer, and there's some battleships in here as well, and you know, we're really going to be counting on our destroyers to do some significant damage to some of these heavier enemy ships. That's what we're hoping for. It doesn't necessarily have to happen, though. Keep in mind, we've mentioned it countless times on the channel before, but when you are in this sort of defensive positioning, you know, you're positioning yourself defensively against the enemy to prevent the capture of your base, that does not mean that the enemy cannot step foot in your base. In this specific situation, we notice that my allied ships are getting closer to the enemy base. So by noticing that, we can simply, you know, come to the conclusion that, well, I don't have to prevent the enemy from capping my base, from starting to cap the base, right? All I have to do is stall them. If I can stall them long enough that my team can cap their base first, that'd be good enough for me. And you know, the benefit there too is you get to play a little more cautiously, because you really don't want to die in this sort of situation, especially for me right now. I mean, if you take a look at the the allied ships I do have around me, it's destroyers, cruisers, and I think there might be a battleship mixed in here as well. And we're facing off some of the heavier ships on the enemy team, so, you know, I really don't want to die in this situation here. I want to stay alive as long as I possibly can, to make sure that I'm providing as much support as I possibly can to my allies who are preventing the enemy from capping our base, right? Or who are stalling the enemy from capping our base. That's what I'm trying to do here. And, you know, I'm doing a fairly good job right now, playing fairly cautiously. You can see I have my my ally aircraft carrier right next to me here as well, which is great because I'm able to swoop in here and provide some AA support for the enemy aircraft carrier. And in fact, the torpedo strike that just went off at the ally aircraft carrier there missed entirely, so fantastic. Now this enemy destroyer has popped up. I have to do something about this enemy destroyer. The ideal situation here is that I kill the enemy destroyer and my allied carrier lives. That is what I'm going to try and do. Enemy destroyer, though, you know, not a stupid player, not going to be firing at me solely. He is firing, or the player rather, is firing at the enemy Shuikaku, or sorry, my allied Shuikaku here, trying to take that guy out. You can see a lot of torpedoes in the water right now, so clearly there is another enemy destroyer around here somewhere. We lose sight of the original enemy destroyer, but he is continuing to put shots into my allied aircraft carrier. I make a mistake here, right? My allied aircraft carrier gets sunk, that's tragic, but I think I really should have turned into the enemy destroyer to take that guy out. I mean, we see the second enemy destroyer pop up, quickly goes behind some cover, and I'm going to try and chase these guys down. I've got my acoustic sonar ability popped already, right? It's been popped for a little while now, so I do get the benefit of seeing these torpedoes incoming, and which is great, because I don't have the hit points to take another torpedo hit, right? I've taken some big hits here, and I can't afford to take any more, because it will kill me, and I don't want to die. I want to help my allies here defend the base. While this is going on, my allies on the east have finally pushed into the enemy base, so fantastic. They are now capping that base. Enemy destroyer pops up, so immediately start putting shots into this guy, right? Japanese destroyer may not have the best guns on the ship, but the guns that the Japanese destroyers do have do a bit of damage, right? A considerable amount of damage for some destroyer guns, so need to keep that in mind. We can see the Japanese destroyer, you know, kind of in the area of my torpedo, so I'm going to launch off torpedoes. Hopefully those are going to do something. And there's the second enemy destroyer. Engines are gone on this enemy destroyer, so we don't need to leave the target as much, so I immediately start to engage this guy. We're going to try and get him down, or get him gone, because this is a player right now that is in our base, actually capping our base. Well, contesting the base, right? Because we have another allied ship in there who's preventing the actual capture. So we're going to try and get this guy gone, and we're going to keep in mind that we don't need to take, you know, big risks to prevent the enemy from starting to cap the base. We just need to stall them. Even if this destroyer starts to cap our base, that's not that big of a deal, right? We can just continuously reset the cap and keep letting our allies down there in the south cap, the enemy base without having to worry about what's going on up here at our base. So the torpedoes I launched off at the enemy destroyer, obviously those have missed. Not really surprised, right? It's an enemy destroyer. They are nimble and fairly easy to avoid incoming enemy torpedoes. We still have that enemy destroyer, though, in our base, capping it away. We can see him over there. He's on fairly low health, so I'm going to try and do something about this guy. He pops out of sight, so we're not able to see him, but I do still have shots going into him, so that is pretty good. Pretty satisfied with those. And at this point, my allies down there in the south have about half of the enemy base captured, so fantastic. Obviously, we're doing a great job up here of stalling the enemy's cap, right? We're not preventing it because they are actually capping right now, but we are definitely stalling. Enemy Iowa has shots incoming for me. Thankfully, those don't do a whole bunch of damage because, again, I don't have the hit points to be able to take big shots like that. Enemy destroyer pops up once again. Again, he's on very low health, so I'm going to start putting shots into him immediately. Pops back at his sight. Hopefully those shots though will find their mark, maybe do a bit of damage, and in fact they do. There they go. Took out the enemy destroyer who was in our base. Fantastic. Our base though is still being contested right now, still being capped. And that's because the second enemy destroyer is now in our base, but look at the cap we have on the enemy base. Doesn't matter, right? We did it. And again, that's all you have to do in these situations. You don't have to prevent the enemy from actually getting into the cap. You just have to stall them. Give your allies a chance to do their job. Anyway, battle is over. Victory is achieved. We get Dreadnought, a devastating strike. 300,000 credits, which isn't too bad, and 5,500 experience. Third overall in the team, which is pretty great, I thought, considering, tier 10 battle. So that's not too bad. Did a bit of damage there, over 50,000, so that's pretty great as well. And obviously, we walk away with positive credit, so that's always fantastic. But anyway, just I guess maybe a reminder that you don't necessarily always have to cap the enemy base, and also, just talk about the little events going on. So I can't wait to finish up the video here, finish up the rest of the process, jump into ships and play some of those jacuzzi battles. I think that is going to be great. Anyway, guys, happy April Fool's Day if you celebrate it. I don't know. Felt I should say it. But, as always, leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Love reading those and responding back to them. Hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. And as always, folks, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.